Back in September 2019, I ended up meeting up with a girl in the comments section of a Facebook post. She was really pretty and seemed really cool, so after a few weeks of talking, I decided to drive all the way from White Plains to Pittsburgh just so we could hang out for a weekend. I remember a friend asking something to the effect of, "Have you talked to her much on the phone?" And I told him we'd spoken a little, but that we'd mostly talked via text and Facebook Messenger. And he recommended that we talk in long form and about a lot of different stuff too. Otherwise, I might get a nasty surprise. Well, I guess he was right. And now I won't bore you with all of the details, but let's just say me and this girl weren't nearly as compatible as I'd hoped. And then while I'd originally planned on staying the whole weekend so me and her could get some food, maybe catch a movie, I decided to just cut my losses and drive back to New York on Saturday evening. I figured if I hit the road at around 7 p.m. I could be back home by around 1 the next morning. And no doubt I'd be exhausted by the time I got home, but not too beat that I'd risk getting into an accident or anything. So with my mind made up, that's what I did. After getting a quick bite to eat, I was on the 22 by 7:30, and then after 3 hours of driving with the setting sun in my rear view, I saw a sign for Rosecrans, PA. It had been dark for maybe 30 to 40 minutes, and I remember seeing a Sunoco gas station all lit up just off the highway to my left. Then just a mile or two up the road, and in timeless fashion, my gas gauge lit up with a low gas warning. Maybe that's just my luck, that it never lights up as I'm approaching a gas station, only ever when it's just a speck in my rear view. But I was also driving on one of those divided highways, the kind with a whole-ass miniature park between the two stretches of highway, and this obviously meant that there was no turning around for miles. And then I asked my phone, "Hey Siri, where's the next gas station?" And then my phone started talking about another gas station that I'd find if I turned onto US 15. I'd have to drive another 20 to 30 minutes or so, but it was there, and I wasn't about to run out of gas and get stranded like an idiot. And I remember checking the highway ahead of me and not seeing any other cars behind me or ahead of me, so I thought it was safe to actually look at my phone screen to make sure that I'd take the right turn. And I swear to God, I looked for no longer than 2 seconds at the most, and then when I brought my eyes back to the road, there she was, dead ahead of me. I slammed on my brakes, almost giving myself whiplash in the process, but I kept control of my car. The girl went from being a faintly lit shape on the furthest and dimmest reaches of my headlights to being only 5 feet in front of me. And while my first instincts were to yell, "Are you effing crazy?" at her, I quickly realized why she'd been walking in the middle of the highway. She looked to be in a bad, bad way. Her clothes were all torn up, and there was blood in her hair from what looked like a head wound, and I didn't see it until she climbed into my passenger seat, but she wasn't wearing any shoes either. The moment my car stopped, she limped around to my passenger side and then tried to open up the door. I keep it locked out of habit, so her first attempt did nothing but make a dull wrenching sound, but that was soon followed by this blood-curdling screech of, "Open the door, I'm begging you, please!" I still had zero clue what was going on, so my first reaction was to spin around in my seat just in case who or whatever had hurt her was close by. I didn't open my car door right away, because obviously if I was going to carjack someone, using a pretty girl in distress as bait seems like a very effective tactic. But when I didn't see anyone, and when the girl gave me another very convincing cry of "please help me," I guess that seeing the blood up close and hearing the genuine terror in her scream, they kind of overrode my paranoia. Then after taking one final look at her, I unlocked my car, and she practically dove into the back seat before slamming the door closed behind her. And as I took off again, she says, "Mister, we need to move. We're not going fast enough. They're going to catch us." And so I put my foot down as I asked who they were. She said she didn't know. They just took her. And it was then that I noticed the handcuffs around her left wrist. One cuff was still locked around it, but the other just hung there awkwardly. I didn't need any more information other than that. I just put my foot down and burned rubber for a few miles till I thought that we were at a safe distance. I checked my rear view a few times, and then when I didn't see any lights, I slowed from around 70 to a pretty safe 35. But as we started to slow, the girl started yelling. And she says, "Why are you slowing down?" And before I could even answer, she says, "Go faster, what are you doing? They're going to be following me." I'm kind of freaking out internally, but I told her there was no one in sight. And we also wouldn't be going anywhere if a cop came the other way and caught us doing a buck and change. But then she says, "You don't get it. We want the cops. If those guys catch me, they'll kill you too." And I guess when you think about it, I didn't doubt that. If whoever she was talking about had been willing to handcuff her before trying to crack her head open, I have no doubt that they'd put a bullet in me to get her back. It was also kind of a relief to hear that thing about the cops too, because when I saw the handcuffs, there was a part of me that thought, Jesus, please don't accidentally be harboring a fugitive right now. But it wasn't the cops she was running from. I sped up a little, pushing things back up to 60 plus so we were moving without breaking any speed limits. And then I was checking my rear view every other second, expecting a pair of headlights to appear. And that's when I remembered my goddamn gas tank and how it was almost empty. As you can imagine, the girl was not excited when I told her that we needed to stop for gas at the next town. She didn't want to believe it at first, that the driver she thought was going to save her had a fuel gauge in the red, and she started freaking out in the passenger seat, screaming the F word over and over until I managed to talk her down. I put my foot down again, picked up some speed, and then told her to call the cops and tell them to meet us at that gas station that we were about to pull to. The girl grabbed my phone from the dash and called 911, and then over the next minute or so, I listened to what she said and got a little more info on what had happened. She didn't go into too much detail, but after telling the cops where we were going, she explained to the dispatcher that she'd been kidnapped, taken someplace out in the woods, then handcuffed to a metal pipe which she'd broken to get free. She said, "I don't know a lot, so I'm assuming in response to questions like who were they or where exactly are you right now." But I also learned that she'd been held for a couple of days by that point, and whoever had been holding her captive had done some disgusting and evil stuff to her. It was no coincidence that when she started detailing some of the stuff she'd endured, I noticed my speed gauge creeping up to 75. It was making my skin want to crawl off my bones just listening to the stuff those creeps did to her. And in my head, I guess I imagined them to look something like monsters. Little did I know, I'd be meeting them sooner than I thought. So we kept on speeding down the highway until we reached the turn that I'd read about, and then after maybe 5 more minutes of rolling through small-town Pennsylvania and sticking to the speed limit, we came to that gas station where we were supposed to meet the cops. But they were nowhere to be seen, and when she realized this, the girl started to freak out again. She started yelling at me, saying, "Where are they? They said they'd be here. Where are they?" And I tried to calm her down by explaining they were probably on their way. But this did nothing to keep her calm. For a few minutes, the girl sat in my passenger seat, watching a car pass here and there and getting super freaked out about who it might be. Then when a car pulled into the gas station and stopped at a pump, she says, "Oh, screw this. I'm getting out of here." She then jumped out of my car and ran off onto the street behind the gas station and toward what looked like a thick patch of trees.